2, 1, action.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 30th, 2025 meeting of the Croton Hardin Union Free School District. I would like to call to order the meeting. Item 1.2, approval of the agenda. Recommended action, be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Turning to item 1.3, appointment of the district clerk pro tem. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby appoints Denise Harrington Cohen as district clerk pro tem for the purpose of this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. I would like to turn to Superintendent Walker for recognition of the unified team.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening, everyone, to all members of our Tiger community who are here this evening and all who are watching at home. This is a special night and a special opportunity for us to get a chance to recognize and thank some remarkable Tiger student athletes. And I wanted to start just by saying that we talk sometimes about what it means to be a success and successful in our schools. And to all of us and to the entire community, all of you exemplify that. The idea of 1,500 students having 1,500 definitions and trajectories of success. And I want to say thank you because for so many of us, getting a chance to watch you over the past year has brought us moments of pure joy and tremendous emotion, and have served as a beautiful reminder of why all of us do what we do in this special and beautiful community. So we thank you. We want to take this evening to spend some time recognizing you, and to help do that, it's my pleasure to introduce Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Services, Rachel DePaul, and Director of Health, Wellness, Physical Education, and Athletics, Christine Drago. Rachel and Christine.
So good evening, everyone. Tonight we celebrate the incredible unified sports athletes. Their teamwork, perseverance, and friendship has made this program so special. Unified Sports brings together students with and without disabilities, showing us that we can all be unified and grow together. So to my athletes, I'm so proud of you guys. It was such a great season. And it was such a joy to watch you guys play. And to our coaches, I want to thank you and Ms. Woodward for your commitment and your eagerness to get the Unified Sports program off the ground, and we appreciate you for that. So now we will be presenting a trophy to each of our athletes. So I'll ask Coach Brunel and Coach Palanzar to come up. And if you can call the names of our athletes. You want to call me from that? You're okay.
All right. Anybody want to go first? Picking Vin Flynn. Gavin Dugan. Max Fredman. Brady Tulbeski. Cormac Taylor. Daniel Cuss. Luke Salduti. Ryan DeCruz. And last but not least, Jose Ledesma.
All right, so if the team could come together with their coaches. and we'll take a photo, and then we'll have the family come in on a second, okay?
What do you want?
Greg is our,
I would say, if we can go back by that bookshelf back there. All right, ready? So Tigers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Tigers.
Excellent. All right, you want to get put that easy?
Hey Greg, can you grab one with the board too? Oh, yeah.
Everybody get here. First. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Excellent. Now take one more before remember that.
Again,
I can back up a little bit too.
Now look at Rachel.
Yeah, I can't see you. Rachel. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Bye. Thank you, everybody. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Bye, Christine. Did you get that too?
no, one of the kids graduated, so his mom.
That's great stuff. Thanks for that's good stuff. Thank you for bringing that to us. Moving into item 2.1, open the public hearing of the 2025-2026 District-wide Safety and Emergency Management Plan. Recommended action, be it resolved, the Board of Education opens a public hearing for the 2025-2026 District-wide Safety and Emergency Management Plan.
So moved. Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Item 2.2, public comment and communications. So this will open the public comment portion of the district-wide safety and emergency management plan. If there's anyone who would like to address.
Sure.
Please state your name and address. Please. for the record.
Hi, Ben Faber, Maple Street. The plan overall really makes sense. It's very disappointing, distressing that our society exists in such a state that such a detailed safety plan is necessary in order for students, 5 to 17 years old to attend schools. But the plan mostly makes sense. I didn't see anything in the plan, I may have missed it, but I didn't see anything in the plan that seemed to respond to or acknowledge what was ultimately published in the local press in September about security issues of malfunctioning RFID tag lock things, whatever. I'm not a security tech guy. At the elementary school, insofar as I didn't see anything about that, I'm curious to know and get some comment, hopefully, on to what extent the immediate reporting and immediate repair of that happened and would have been consistent or inconsistent with the safety plan as understood by the district. I don't know a huge amount about the details, but there seems to be at least a plausibly colorable claim that the district is engaged in some degree of whistleblower retaliation against staff who sought to remedy that situation. Obviously, insofar as that's true or plausible, the administration should be transparent about that, and the board should aggressively investigate that, because if there are in fact security risks to our students, particularly inconsistent with the safety plan, and then a member of the staff was seeking to resolve that and ultimately even breached some technical policy in the course of being unable to get sensible remediation to that safety risk, that is the administration really kind of giving a big screw you to all the families who entrust their students' safety to the school.
Ed Riley from Truesdale Drive. I have to confess I haven't read the safety plan. I'm assuming that given the experience of schools throughout the United States over the last year and over the last decade, that this board is hot on physical safety. You know, if a parent entrusts the school to take care of their children for somewhere between 5 to 8 hours a day, I assume that whether that kid is on your property, on our property, school board property, or on a bus belonging to this school district, that you have now made the absolute best safety plan you can put together. I'd like to draw attention to the fact in the past you failed at this, not this group per se, but this district has failed at this. For political reasons. We don't want any police on campus, blah, 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 blah. And that didn't apply to all 3 schools, but it certainly applied to 2. And to this day, there's still safety problems. I should be required to turn my driver's license in, or at least have it recorded before I come to this meeting. Because I come to meetings here, and have in the past when there are other things going on in the school, whether they be classes, night classes, or sporting events. So you should at least have a record of my driver's license that I came on campus at this door downstairs, as opposed to some guy waving me on. You know, I may be crazy, so I didn't do things the 12 previous visits, but on a 13th visit, you know, I go crazy. So every time I should be stopped at the door because there are kids wandering around this school, and it could be my day to be a nut job. So I would just bring that to your attention. The other thing is that in the past, and I've heard this here, that if kids have certain psychological problems, whether it be sexual problems, identity problems, you know, maybe we shouldn't tell the parents. Well, I think based upon what's going on in the last year in the United States of America with some of these people with problems who are students or ex-students, even if the police can't keep a record because the person doesn't leave a trail where it could be a felony or misdemeanor with another kid or a teacher, there should be a disciplinary record that says, you know what, this kid, this alumni, or this employee is a dangerous person. And maybe we ought to put him on leave, maybe we ought to keep an eye on him, maybe we ought to tell the parents about it, maybe we ought to tell the damn parents themselves about it so they can get immediate care for this person as opposed to, well, it's in this certain area of trouble. Maybe we shouldn't tell the parents. Yes, you should. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2.3, recommended action be resolved the Board of Education hereby adjourns the public hearing on the 2025-2026 district-wide safety and emergency management plan.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Item 2.4, recommended action be resolved after having given the public an opportunity to be heard at a public hearing, the Board of Education hereby adopts the 2025-2026 district-wide safety plan and building level emergency response plans. And be it further resolved, the district clerk is directed to file the district-wide safety plan and building level emergency response plans with the Commissioner of Education within 30 days of the adoption, as well as provide a copy to appropriate local law enforcement agencies and the state police.
So moved. Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. I just want to thank our consultant, Pam, at Alteris. This, the way that the requirements for this, we basically had to go through this twice this year. So I just want to appreciate everything you do for us and how persistent you are to make sure that we're consistently following all of the state regulations, the state requirements, and that all of our safety plans are in order. We feel safer in our schools, our children being in these schools because of your oversight in terms of all of that. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Pam. You went through it with a fine-tooth comb, I know. There was a lot of updating and checking, and after the board reviewed it, you did such a great job with that, so we really appreciate it.
And then you went back and did it again.
That's important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Item 3.1, instructional personnel recommendations. Recommended action be resolved the Board of Education hereby approves the instructional personnel recommendations as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Moving into item 4, the consent agenda. Item 4.1, recommended action be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. At this point, we are going to move into our work session. The work session for this evening is board goals. We had moved the consent agenda to the forefront of the meeting for two reasons: to allow our wonderful administrative team to go home prior to knowing that it was going to be a dark and stormy night. We did kind of want to allow you guys the opportunity to go home one Thursday before 10 p.m., but also to not constrain the board conversation because we do try to be considerate of you. And as the evening wears on, we start to hold back so that we can continue to kind of brainstorm as we work on these important goals. We're happy to let you guys finish your 12-hour workday. Right? Yeah. Yeah, of course. So I don't know if you want to stay for a portion of it, if you want to head out at a certain time. We're going to work on our board goals. We'd love your input.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, wonderful. We'll take a second for that. Yeah. Sorry, Greg? So moving into item 5.1. I don't know if you guys want to spread out, because you're kind of tense over there. Our Board of Education goals for the 2025-2026 year. I'm going to turn it over to our Board Development Committee, who traditionally has spearheaded these efforts. Having a work session on this is actually something that we're doing for the first time in my tenure as a board member. Just for purposes of history, our board goals were usually brainstormed in board development, and then they were presented to the board, and there was discussion as an agenda item at the board. But we're taking it back to actually like having our collaborative work of the board and discussing them in an open public meeting happening here, all of us together. There was one year where board development actually asked for the assistance of the policy chair to get that done. So it's been a shifting process over the last few years, and we're gonna, as you all try new things, we're going to try something new, as we think of what school can be, right?
That Omar had told us previously that he was going to be arriving about 8 o'clock.
Correct.
So,
It's okay,
yeah,
we've
just
got
remember
some
that.
things to talk about to get us to that time.
He owes me 5 minutes from the retreat, so I'm gonna take him now.
Okay.
Okay, are you continuing with your preamble, or are you passing the baton?
I have more preamble, no, I don't have more preamble.
I'm going to borrow your mic because we've only got the one here, I think. Okay, so as the chair of the Board Development Committee, I'm going to sort of kick us off. And while we will be talking for a few minutes just to give Omar a chance to get here, this is actually sort of an important background for the conversation. So as a board, for the benefit of the public and people listening at home, we do meet to discuss our sort of governance priorities and ways that the board operates in a retreat that is not generally a public meeting. That is something that happens 3 times a year. One of the important things I want to just point out about that is that no board business or decisions are made during those retreats. That's one of the reasons why when we discuss things like developing our goals, it is something that actually needs to happen in a committee meeting, which is a public meeting, or a regular meeting or work session like this, again, a public meeting. So if the board, I believe, hopefully all had a chance to look at the supporting materials for tonight's discussion. I'm going to take a moment to read a couple of them just to sort of give us all a reminder of the background for this conversation, and then also for the, for the members of the community who might be listening to this at home or listening to it later, to also see sort of the materials that we looked at as we convened for this discussion. So borrowing from the New York State School Boards Association's description of the role of the board, I'm going to just read sort of like the top line, a couple of paragraphs from that. This is the long version. You can follow along at home, and I'm going to read a sort of like a shorter version. Improving student achievement and providing equitable access and opportunities for all students requires strong and effective governance, with the school board's work at the policy level and the district and school administrators working at the operational level. Together, the school board and district governance team directly impact student achievement in 5 key ways. The first of these is establishing a vision and goals that demonstrate a commitment to high expectations. By establishing student achievement as the central core belief of the district and defining what improving achievement means to the district and to the community, school boards set the vision for student learning that serves as the foundation for district goals and the direction for school improvement. The second element is ensuring accountability. School boards monitor district activities to ensure that annual progress is being made, that achievement gaps are closing, and that the public is kept informed about student progress. Third of these is developing policy, which you've heard as one of our key functions as a board. Establishing a policy structure to support student achievement is a core function of the school board. In this policy role, school boards adopt curriculum frameworks, establish assessment requirements that provide performance data for monitoring student achievement, and establish human resource structures that reflect a commitment to student learning. The fourth of these is demonstrating community leadership. Through public advocacy and community engagement, school boards share their concerns and actions with the public and listen to and address the public's concerns. Last and most important, the board is responsible for building a collaborative relationship with the superintendent. Effective school boards lead as a united team with the superintendent, each in their respective roles, with strong collaboration and mutual trust. So, as we open up tonight's discussion, please keep these in mind, and also keep in mind a great definition of the role of the school board that I heard recently from a colleague in a neighboring district. We were talking about, I was attending a Westchester Putnam School Boards Association sort of like get together for trustees in their first year and their first term, and people were sort of exchanging ideas of what it means to serve as a trustee. And this trustee from a neighboring district articulated it as, our job is to reflect back community values. And what I thought was really interesting about that is the idea of a reflection, which is, it's not necessarily like a one-to-one interpretation of what the community is saying. It's actually hearing what the community is saying, processing it, thinking about it in the context of what we've just talked about here in terms of the role of the school board, and then reflecting it back. So just, like a mirror reflection isn't identically exactly what you're seeing in the community. It's an interpretation. It's a way of absorbing and returning back and reflecting back what we're hearing. I hope we'll keep that in mind as we sort of embark on this conversation and start talking about what we want to focus on as a board in the remainder of this school year, and also what we want to focus on in the coming years. One of the things that the district, I think, has done so well, and we have decided as a board to be in alignment with this, is to establish multi-year goals, because just because we get to the end of the school year doesn't mean that the work ends. The most productive work that this district has done has been multi-year and has sort of had a trajectory with a start and like a midpoint and eventually, an end. And I think for us as a board to be looking at our work in the same way is really useful. It allows us the latitude to sort of say, we don't have to focus on this right now because we're going to focus on it next year, but we can always keep sight of it. So that's just another, plan to lay out for us today. The way that I thought we might start this discussion is actually just to open it up for open discussion. Ideally we could go around the room if folks want to, or we could just sort of open it up and let it be a free-for-all depending on what the energy level is. But I think to start by identifying what the key focus areas are before articulating specific goals. And what I mean by that is sort of like big picture topics in terms of areas of focus, and then perhaps developing or starting to brainstorm goals underneath that. The other thing is that I don't think we'll necessarily end up formalizing any of it today. It's really to sort of do the brainstorming and get consensus on where we want to focus, and then either board development will refine it, or as a group we'll sort of figure out how to refine it and bring it back for adoption. So that's sort of the big explanation. Took us to 8 o'clock, but I think we're going to start our discussion while we're waiting for our colleague to join us. So I'll open it up to anyone who wants to get the ball rolling with talking about what you'd be interested in seeing as a focus area, or what you think we as a group have been talking about, what you'd like to sort of highlight. I won't go first though, because I did the big intro. Don't all rush into it at once.
Well, I would like to offer Philomena an opportunity to ask me questions or to say.
Sure.
I don't want to put you on the spot though, if you don't have anything to say. Don't.
I would definitely like to speak on it, but I don't think I'd be the best to start here, just because I'm like rereading it too,
Sure,
so I can get a better understanding of it first.
Go for it, Neil.
I'll start,
Thank you, Neil.
just to get us rolling. Generally, in thinking of board goals, they have two parts to them. One is internal, and I mean internal both in terms of our goals, and we had this in some prior year goals, to make ourselves, or help make ourselves better board members by the work that we do, our professional development, our reading, our participating this year in some district committees where we get to do a deeper dive, our learning walks, our things that go beyond learning walks. I think that's part of it, and that should be part of our goals, because part of it is to be reflective, self-reflective. But the other part is really to figure out how we mesh with the district goals that have already been articulated, and how we mesh with the superintendent's goals, which of course are built on the district goals. So that as a governance team, we are going to the same end as Anonymous said, this is a multi-year process, not a single year change of goals every July 1st. I also think that in considering this subject, we have to, goals are supposed to be something that we can measure, how well we're doing. We do a self-evaluation at the end of the year, and we have to say, what have we done, and how do we move the ball forward? And that's kind of, just the starting point. I'm not getting into here yet the specifics of what might we do, but just kind of conceptually how we might look at the task ahead.
Great, okay, I'll jump on what you talked about, because I think you're right that in recent years, an element of professional development has been sort of like a crucial part of the way that the board has articulated its goals, and I think that's definitely been helpful. One of the things that I'm really pleased about in terms of our committee structures, which have also evolved over the last couple of years, is the way that we're now using committees to actually do some of that work of the board. And I think what it allows us to do is actually, it opens up a little bit of space to think about perhaps less of the internal meal that you were talking about, only because the readings, the attending conferences, and the learnings, that to some degree has become sort of part of the job of a trustee and part of our sort of shared responsibility. So while I like the idea of continuing to highlight that, I guess one of the things that I've been thinking about is, coming into this conversation, if we could sort of, for me, I'm trying to sort of separate it into sort of three strands. Yes, absolutely, like the individual in terms of the learning that I'd like to do as a trustee, the learning that I think the board needs to do by talking to other boards, like, learning about their best practices, which is something we did at our retreat earlier this week. I think that's a significant part of it. But I think also, thinking about what aspects of what we want to do fall under the type of learning that we could do at work sessions, for example. I think that that's an opportunity where we haven't necessarily sort of been as vocal in terms of using that as an opportunity to learn about what the district is doing and to actually help the community also learn about what the work of the district, the work of the district. So I think that would be an interesting thing to sort of look at. And then the third piece of it, I think, is to also just, as I said before, to remind ourselves of what we can sort of accomplish through committees, because tasking all 7 of us to work on, say, communications, that would be great if there's like a big communications thing to tackle, but I think also the efficiency that we've been able to put into place by, assigning policy to policy, assigning governance to our governance group, communications to that sort of structure has allowed that work to continue, and I think it's left a little bit of an opening for us to look at sort of bigger picture things here in alignment with, as you said, Neil, the vision map and what we sort of articulated as part of the district's strategic plan for the current years that we're in, I guess. Again, not really moving the conversation forward, but giving a little bit of like my thinking in terms of what we could be thinking about. And after other folks go, I'd love to try to figure out how to make it a little bit more specific and come down to focus areas as we are able to. Other people?
Yeah. So, I actually really like the idea of ways that we might be able to think about how we use our work session time in a way that is more strategically aligned to show the work that is ongoing in the district and to be able to pull that information. I think we've started doing that in the past year and a half, which I think is great. I think if we could create that, create more structured way for that to happen and checkpoints throughout the year on different things that align to the vision map and our district goals, I think that would be very useful. I think also in looking over last year's goals, one that we acknowledged at the time that was a multi-year goal was this idea of, my glasses to be able to read it, the reviewing existing measures that assess student performance and working to identify, establish, and report new measures that aim to more comprehensively assess student performance. And now we're doing that work with a district committee this year, but I think continuing to keep that front of mind for the board, and working that into what we hear about from our district committees as they begin to do their work and they start coming up with some recommendations. I think that will be important as well.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us about that. I probably should have started with sort of like a check-in on our previous year's goals, but thank you for bringing that one up because that is when that continued on. And the good news is that last year, although we never sort of formally adopted our goals, we actually accomplished 3 out of 4.
We did, yeah. So we did a good job with our
Good
goals
job.
last year. So and we said at the outset that was going to be a multi-year
Yeah,
goal. So
exactly.
I think this is
Yeah.
keeping that as something that we focus on would be useful.
Great. Allison, Anna, do you want to chime in?
I'll let Allison go.
Some of the, going back to one of the phrase you talked about, Anamika, that I heard as well at the same meeting, that was great, like our job is to reflect back community values. So thinking about some of the things we've been hearing from the community and just in general in the world today, I would be interested in us from the policy perspective, looking at the topics on AI, also just in general around data privacy. It's evolving, and we did adopt the social media policy, but there are still, I think, I would argue, some gaps that might be addressed that we see bubbling up. So I think that would be an area of interest. Technology is like a whack-a-mole. There's always a new thing, but I think the time is right to make some headway in that. I guess the other thing, is kind of piggybacking on Sarah, what you said, and looking at overall assessment and, infusing some, previously I had suggested that we go back to including a written annual report of student achievement, but to, make, I've been hearing from the community, people want data regarding the assessment, the traditional as well as what we're moving towards, like all. We want all. So, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing that I was just thinking about with regard to just hearing from the community is I really like it when we hear from our young people and our students directly.
Yeah.
It's just such a powerful way to, I think, get informed, to be able to do our jobs in an even better way. And I feel like we do a lot, right, via surveys and some direct engagement, but I don't know, I'm just feeling hungry for more of it, and are we doing enough to be able to get as much student input as possible? So I'd love it if we could just dig into that a little bit, right? Or what are other areas that we could, or other strategies that we could employ to hear from our students, perhaps, I don't know, work sessions where we're having, where we have students there to share with us about and give us their input, and be able to provide that. I feel like Phil's amazing right in that, and partially you've inspired me to bring this up because I think anytime you say something, it's so valuable. And I feel like the hunger for more of that to be able to carry our work forward.
Actually, one of the things we just had a Congress meeting today, and one of the things we were talking, I also have another point, but just to add on to that, one of the things we were talking about there is that there used to be the system where it would be multiple students rotating in. For the Board of Ed meetings, we wanted to bring that back, not only for, just experience and for people to learn more about the position, but also for different perspectives and different student viewpoints. Also, we were saying potentially some other districts I know do have 2 student representatives, and they usually have a junior and senior staggered, so that way they can, the senior can kind of help the junior, and then obviously it's staggered, so and we were saying that maybe we could do something about implementing that here, if that could be a possibility, just because that would probably be pretty beneficial to us. And also to add on again to the student involvement, correct me if I'm wrong, students are allowed to be on the committee, some of these committees, right? I feel like me personally, I didn't know that till I was a member on the board of it myself. I just feel like a lot of students don't even know about that. So if there's some way, whether it's through like even flyers around the halls that like tell students more like, oh, you can go and be a part of this committee, especially because I'm sure some of the committees, like different students are going to be passionate about different things. I just feel like there's not really a lot of general advertisement for that to the high school students. So I think if we created advertisement about that, it would just get a surplus of student involvement.
So just for background information on that, this year the district re-envisioned those committees.
Oh, okay.
So historically, I think that it was really just like the task forces and different things that had like some student voice on them. But this year the district decided that they would include student voice in all of those committees. So it might be why you haven't heard about it before. It wasn't really. But students are always welcome to any of our meetings. They're open to the public. Like our different committee meetings, board development, communications, policy, any of that.
Right, and are you going to talk about the policy changes that we talked about with regards to the student board member?
Before we get to that,
Yeah.
I just want to say, since I also attended Student Faculty Congress,
Yeah.
one of the things that was I suggested, is that it would be valuable to us as a board, and this is really directed at administration, to have student participation and voice in work sessions where that is appropriate. When we talk about, for example, on a work session on what's happening in each of the schools, particularly the high school, it would have been great in addition to having the high school administration to also have students who can tell us what they're finding about those initiatives, what they're finding about interdisciplinary, etc. And I'll just add, one of the sessions I went to at the NISBA convention was two sessions I want to mention. One was about a STEM high school where the presenters were 4 students from that high school who really were the stars of the show, and the principal of the high school was just asking them questions. And I also know there was another session I attended where in Mechanical Hills, as I understand it, the students in that K-8 school are working directly with the faculty and administrators dealing with AI issues. And I need to find out more about that, but that's the kind of bringing students in at any level and bringing them for we to hear and the public to hear, which would be helpful. So that's my thought as to the, as to what Phil had just mentioned, which I, to speak, put that on your radar as you start planning work sessions. As far as policy issues regarding what Phil talked about, we know that under the law, we must have at least one, but we're not limited to one, student trustee. And in the review of some other boards that I've seen, some have 2, some have 4, and they alternate. There are different ways of selecting them. We do it presently by election.
Correct.
But that may not be the best way, we can talk about that. And also, or some, like Byram Hills, they just say, Student Faculty Congress President and Vice President, they're going to be the 2 reps. And, there's a whole lot of different ways to do it. I think when we adopted the policy on student rep, ex officio trustees a number of years ago, we knew that the law could provide, we could do it in a number of different ways, including election, choosing somebody from the student government, having a person chosen by the principal, which we back then didn't like because we felt it shouldn't just be whoever the principal likes. But those are all things that will be on the policy committee agenda this year so that we can have something in place as a change in policy
Yeah,
by
in the spring.
so that it can be there for 26, 27.
I just just want to take a moment and thank, I think it was you and Sarah who were on the board at the time, because this board, the board at that moment, they brought on the student ex officio, and Josh.
Josh was the big.
Josh was very big at that. I think Josh and I crossed words a couple times over it, because I was like, I thought at the time that it represented too much of the senior, or the high school voice, and not enough of the other buildings, which I thought was like one of the challenges. But Josh set me straight on that. But you did implement that in advance of many other districts doing it. It wasn't a requirement until last year. And we had, I think, 2 years under our belts at that point. So this board, this year, so we're 4 years ahead. And it was work by this board that did that. So thank you to you guys for doing that. To switch on to.
I think, and really, I think that the real kudos there goes to Student Faculty Congress, who had initially germinated that idea and had those conversations with Josh, who was part of sat on Student Faculty Congress as the liaison that year. And so it was like a student and Josh came to the board with that, so it was really.
And for context, I'm talking about former trustee Josh Diamond.
Yeah. So before we leave this, just so that you have something, sorry, do you have, is it not the?
No, it's
okay, so just really quickly so that we don't forget, Phil, I think it would be great just because, as Neil said, policy, so we're gonna look at the policy that establishes how this is gonna work going forward, and from a board governance perspective. We're also talking about what we feel would serve the board best in terms of representation. So exactly what you talked about, this idea of potentially having a junior and a senior, so there's also sort of like a learning year and a doing year could be an interesting thing. So we will submit back to you some questions maybe that you could take to SFC so that you all could talk about it as a group before then we use that information to inform our discussions. And apologies, just saying that's something that we're going to make like this week.
Yeah, I would just add that since I'm also this FC liaison, I consider it a resource.
Yep.
To them as they have their
I
questions.
heard it was a wonderful meeting, very efficiently run by Madam President.
It's true.
Kept them on time with that.
So just in terms of my reflection on the goals and to reiterate some of what Neil said, I always kind of take it as an opportunity to also educate myself as a board member. So I think in the past we've always had an element of it where we as a board would work to kind of educate ourselves on an area of work that overlapped with the district goals. And in keeping with reflecting the values of the community, we do here as a board that assessments and data and things like that are very important. I think that we as a board should have it be one of our goals to really educate ourselves on what that looks like.
Right.
What new assessments look like, what assessments are currently used, why we're moving away from certain other types of assessments, so that we have that information as board members to potentially enact policy or to potentially support things or to ask questions thoughtfully.
When is the next time that we so we know that just to jump off of what you said, Anna, we know that the state is like the State Department of Education is in the process still of revising the portrait of the graduate. It's not like finally finalized like the new version of it. Do we have a sense of like when that is, like when is that work supposed to be completed? Because it's still evolving, or am I incorrect? I think that it's still evolving, the new portrait.
I think the portrait was essentially finalized, but like the sort of the New York Aspire work is still ongoing with the Board of Regents.
Okay.
I would need to look and see what the next Regents date, meeting
What's
date
the
is.
date for the twilighting of the Regents diplomas and all of that?
2027.
2027, right. Right, that's like next, not the end of this school year, it's the end of next school year. So I think that you're 100% right, because it's like, so much of the work that the district has done has been to anticipate these changes that we've known for some time are coming. But I think, this is one of those things that we talk about, which is that we know inside this boardroom and, this meeting that not so many people are listening to, but I don't think the community has a sense of like that change. And I think the other thing we talk about is, and this is a conversation that comes up all the time, which is for community members and for families, our vision of like what school is supposed to be like is often reflective of our own experience. So for people, for example, who have grown up in New York State and have thought of the Regents as like the end-all and be-all of, you know, the culmination of your high school experience, it's not necessarily going to be the case anymore. There are multiple sort of avenues to culminate that experience. And I think sort of figuring, while educating ourselves, it's also an opportunity to educate the community on a lot of the rationale behind why we're looking at these things differently. So to sort of marry those things, I think is a really interesting idea.
So I would love one of our goals to be for us to focus on educating ourselves regarding assessment and feedback and what that looks like, and accurately reflecting the experience of the classes that we're developing in this district, so that we can think critically. I'm not done, I have one more thing that I want to talk about, in terms of goal. And I think that marries well with the district goal, because you're focused on that, so it's kind of collaborative work that way. But the second thing that I think that we need to focus on as a board is communication with the community. And I don't know if that means that we develop a committee that's made up of community members that interacts with the board. If we like establish a new committee, like I don't know what that is, like an advisory committee, thank you, which would be a board committee. Or if that means that we conduct a board survey regarding communication with the public. I know that we haven't done that in a while. The last time that we did that, I think, was 4 years ago, and that came out of the communications committee. But I think at the time it was different. It was more like, do you want to get emails? I mean, so much of that has changed. Like now everything's pushed out through Parent Square. Right, so I think the focus of that last survey was very different from the kinds of things that we would want to focus on now. Those are the two areas that I really think we need to.
So I came into sounds like the tail end of this conversation, but just in case it has been brought up, on the Assessment and Feedback Committee, one of the takeaways from our first meeting was to have everybody think about, or do some research and then think about kind of what's out there, kind of get educated on best practices and again what we do versus what other districts do, and come back and talk about it at the November meeting. So I'm happy to report back after that conversation to kind of debrief about what occurred in that meeting.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I don't mean to be confusing about this, but when we're talking about assessment, to me it means multiple things. One thing is there can be overall program assessment, and there's models with that where we look at like, okay, we've done all these curricular things, like, you know, what's the impact with that? So that's, and then there's within the course itself where, you know, then that's another form of assessment. And then the other thing, so I think all those are very, very valuable. I would just want to make sure there's like where we're moving towards as New York State in the portrait of the graduate, and there's also our interest as a district to explore alternative forms of assessment. I think that's great. There's also the big elephant in the room for a lot of kids and families is the college. So it's like, I think also looking at how does this align with, you know, not everything aligns beautifully. So to me, it's how are we making sure that we're like keep dotting our I, whatever, you know, as crossing T's and this and that, and all these different categories to make sure we are, you know, expanding the different forms of assessment, meeting the needs of our students and their goals, but also to keep making sure that we're on track with other places who may not be as far along with those areas as well.
Right, I'm suggesting that we educate ourselves on all of that.
Fantastic.
Because I think you do raise a really important point, which is New York is a state. The way that we're doing things in New York, it's not reflective of actually the rest of the country. And it's very fair to say that, you know, our students are not all going to be just living and working in New York or doing whatever they do after high school in New York. So I think that's a really important point to raise.
Well, I guess thinking about, I think, Hannah, you're absolutely right, educate ourselves. Part of that education is going to come from the work that is being done on the district committee, of which Omar and I are the two board members who are there, but it's really going to help us to understand what comes out of that committee, what comes out of the state, how it aligns with what other states are doing, how it aligns to what we do in guidance and what we do in preparations for kids applying to colleges, and how we present their assessments in a way that is most beneficial to their search for a college or a different program. I think the education, though, is the most important at this point, as opposed to coming out with a determination. At this point, it's a determination after we know a lot more.
Other thoughts or other ideas, or I might pause in with like a little recap of sort of where we feel like where I've heard we landed, and then we can maybe talk a little bit more about that. Do we feel like we've got more idea generating that we want to do right now before we do that?
I just want to say that I really love the idea of a communications committee that's more has a lot of community members on it. I think that's a great idea, and I think there's in general their communications, but also I think there's been a lot of, like you talked about, guidance and communicating with families and all the changes. So it's like also like there's like communications from us as a board and getting feedback on that, but also like, are there ways as a district we can overall help provide feedback on like what's working, what's not from the communications that people are receiving about the changes.
Another thing, though, that is a little bit different, but it's really something I think we may want to think about at this point in time, is our committee structure. Specifically, we've had these 5, I'll call standing committees, for a long period of time. There are other committees that other districts have, we don't, that deal with other issues, whether they're budget or facilities. We used to have a building and grounds committee way back when, which the folks on that committee interacted with our business official and director of facilities to go over things. I am on a similar committee at P&W BOCES. We ought to think about what we don't cover in the committee structure that may help us serve the board better for, as you described, I don't remember whether it was on Anamika, we've delegated some work to make us more efficient as a board, but there may be things that we should, have us focus on without being on so many committees that, it overwhelms us.
We're figuring it out at this point. But I think the way that you articulated that for me is really useful, is to think about. So we think about like board communications, advocacy, policy, audit, and governance, board development, which covers both like our professional development and some governance. That's sort of what we have covered. What are some of the other things that we feel don't fall? And reminding us also of health and safety, because there is some overlap between now health and safety and building some grounds in other districts. A lot of that here we do manage through health and safety, because it's some of the same individuals who interact there, I guess.
Well, I wonder if it wouldn't be beneficial to change the advocacy committee to also be like the advisory committee. Does that make any sense?
Well, I was wondering if it wouldn't make sense, like, as we think about our committee structures and whether these 5 standing committees are the committees that best serve us right now.
Yes.
Also thinking about the actual structure of and membership of those committees.
Right.
Because there are plenty of neighboring districts whose district committees take different formations in that they have staff and they have community members that sit on those committees as well. That provide some of that advisory feature to it. So in looking at the structure of committees, that might be something that that's part of it.
So I wonder if one of our goals isn't to look at our committee structure.
Sure.
That's why I threw it in.
But just to clarify what you were saying Are you saying that's, because in other districts also have board committees that include.
Correct. So like there are other districts
Right.
who might have, say, like a board, like an audit committee
Right.
that board members sit on, that community members
Also
sit on
sit
as
on,
also
correct.
as
Right,
well.
right,
So
right.
it is still a board committee, it's still a public meeting, it's
Okay,
still,
yeah, yeah.
but there are community members
So what you're
who sit on those.
is what you're saying that we could also consider looking at our own existing committee structure or even, enhancing that committee structure, but looking at it as a way to bring community input and engagement into that conversation.
I think, yeah, that was my main point, like, if one of our goals is going to be looking at our committee structure, that might be one of the things that we look at, not just the committees, like, which committees themselves,
Right.
but also how those committees
And I think some lend that
popular.
better than others.
Sure.
For audit committees, under the law,
Yeah.
you can have a committee that is only board members,
Right.
board members and community members, or the audit committee can be a committee of the whole,
No, I was gonna say, I know of several districts that
Right.
are a committee of the whole for.
Yeah.
which is really nothing more than just the board doing it. But the other thing is to consider whether, for example, for the audit committee, whether it can be more than audit. One district that I know of, and their committee is audit, facilities, and business.
Right.
So because of the most important relationship for audit is with their business officials and facilities as well, they broaden the scope. Yes, that committee works harder, but it covers a need that may not be covered in our current structure that we may feel we ought to cover.
Okay.
And there's, we could do research on a dozen different boards and let's see each of their structures and then think about what would work best for us.
I did find that exercise in preparation for our retreat to look at what other boards are doing to be really eye-opening.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's very, very good.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely good to hear. And I think, some of the comments that we've been making sort of amongst ourselves after that was like, I will say it's like, we can sort of feel like the pressure of like, well, that's how they do it over there. I'm hoping we're also all looking at it as like, it's good information. And we take what we can learn from there, but the work that we do is going to naturally be a product of our approaches. And like I said, that night, it's like, reading from a script is probably not going to be like my thing. And I think that that's okay because I think it makes the work feel really organic and genuine here, so.
Well, the other thing that I would say to you, to just kind of expand upon that, is I have taken it upon myself to kind of follow other community, like social media pages and other district social media pages, and to hear how different communities are, like what challenges they're hearing or facing and how their community members are addressing them and what's happening on different school boards.
Yeah.
Because even sometimes as a trustee, you start to feel like things are going a certain way here, and you live in another district and you can see there are things happening in all of the districts in the entire county, and I think we go to West Putt and we meet with our fellow Westchester County board members, and we hear similar stories. So the things that are happening in this district are not unique.
Yeah. Well, I think to Anama's point, right, like all
yeah.
information is good, and we can take it and sort of distill it and work and use what works for us.
Yeah.
Like we then find the things that are going to work best for our board and for us as trustees as we work.
And I don't mean to diminish the unique work that is happening in our district, because there is unique work happening that we're all very proud of in our district.
What we're talking about is having that perspective, because I think it can be easy to get, it's like when you're in the middle of the work and doing what you're doing, sometimes you're not going beyond, and I think that it has proven to be very helpful to all of us.
Yeah.
Are there other things that folks want to surface, or Phil, is there anything now that you've heard some of this that you would like to comment on, just from a student perspective, in terms of things that you think might be interesting to hear more about for the student community?
I think for students and just in general, I liked the AI comment about that, because I also think it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we only know X amount of things about it right now, as it's only been prevalent for like two years now. So I think hearing more about like even like, I mean, I come from a family of like teachers, so I hear a lot about like, oh, you know, like the students are using so much AI, and like obviously I'm a student, so I'm around that. But I think it would also be interesting to discuss like the harmful like effects in terms of even on like a cognitive level for high school students and just everyone in general. I mean, even adults, but specifically high school students, in that like not only for general intelligence, but also in terms of like creativity and stuff like that. Like I feel like every time someone needs like an idea for something, it's not like, oh, like let's ask AI instead of like let's think about it for 5 minutes. And so I feel like exploring that and like talking about like how negative that can truly be. And I mean, we'll obviously see more of like research based around that as the years go by, but I feel like just discussing that more in depth would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I can say this, but we had the technology committee meeting for the district, and it was interesting because this topic was definitely expressed during the, you know, the course of the meeting, and on that committee, like Omar and I, we're both on it. I think there's one student representative from the high school, but a number of teachers and staff from across, and so yes, I think we're all interested in this as well, so I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
So one of the things that I know will be happening as these district committees sort of get up and running is that we as trustees are also going to report here during our board reports what we heard. I mean, it's great that I think we're doing some of it now because it will mean it'll be a little shorter at the end. But I think that's to say it's like it's definitely on the radar. But I think what you're saying is also that turning our eye, and this also jumps off of what Allison said, is like turning our eye to technology and sort of the view of sort of like digital experiences, digital exploration and technology within the school district and its different permutations sounds like it's a topic of interest as well. So the good news and the bad news is that we have like 8 things, and that's always a lot, but I'm going to do a recap, because, and as I do this recap, what I'd like us to think about is the following, because it would be nice to sort of narrow it down to 3 or 4 if we could, not 6. But think about this if you would. So over the course of the year, we do have work sessions, especially, starting in January, they're going to be devoted a little bit more to budget planning. We already know that. And there are some that are part of our regular schedule, but there's opportunity to also think about these goals in terms of work sessions as in places where we could explore the goal or talk a little bit more about it. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing to think about is, as we've talked about, is which of these things could be assigned to a committee, so that it doesn't necessarily mean that we're discussing it as a whole board, but someone, we have a focus group that goes off and works on it and then reports back. So just think about that. These are the things that I sort of put asterisk next to as the things that rose to the top of this conversation. So, and this is not in order of importance or preference, but just the order of how they were discussed in the meeting today so far. So the first thing that came up was this idea of looking at work sessions as a tool to both give sort of structure to our year in terms of what we're looking at and talking about in terms of district priorities, as well as a mechanism for, and this touches on Allison's point about assessments, meaning the type that students take, and assessment of programs, using work sessions as a way for us as a board and a community and a district to look at the programs. That was one topic that came up. The second thing that came up was, although it was framed in terms of policy, I think now we've talked about it a little bit more, which is sort of like the digital landscape, and that's the bringing together of AI, data privacy, the use of technology in the classroom, the use of technology out of the classroom, just that whole sort of piece of our world and our educational system was the second thing. The third thing was elevating student voice. And that was articulated in a couple of different ways, but among them were the ideas of ensuring that the board and the community is hearing from students directly in their own words when possible, whether there's a way to bring in also, I think we have more regular representation from the high school with Phil, thinking of ways to rotate in other voices, perhaps coordinating through SFC, and also figuring out ways to appropriately and comfortably hear from students at the middle school and the elementary school as well, because they are part of our school community. The next thing was the sort of, this is sort of like a re-articulation of our multi-year goal that we've already established, which is to connect our looking at existing measures that assess student performance through the lens of the changing portrait of a graduate, Aspire, and like the the sort of New York State educational picture, as Anna, I think, articulated it better than I just did, but using that lens to have that conversation. So that was the fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Got 2 more. Communications with the community. The question of how the board can interact. Although we've come up with a number of mechanisms, this would be a more sort of like strategic, I guess, look at how we can connect and communicate better with the community through the different channels we have and to establish a goal around that. And then the last piece was looking at our committee structures to see, to either look at them as a way to further community engagement or to further the goals that we have as a board in ways that maybe we haven't identified. I guess that's sort of how I would articulate it. So those are the 6 things that I counted. Did I miss anything from this conversation that we want to just sort of put out on the table? Is there anything else?
Where did committee things fall under?
Committee things, what do you mean? Which?
What I walked in on, the conversation I walked in on, was about like reevaluating our committee structures and.
Mm-hmm. That was just.
So that was
So
under
that's sort of like the
communication?
last one, the sort
That
of
was the
last
last
committee
one we
structure.
discussed.
So the last one was just sort of looking, evaluating our committee structure, separate from communications with the committee,
Yep,
separate from the
yep,
idea of an
yep.
advisory committee, but just looking at the functions and the composition to see whether the 5 committees that we have established
Yeah.
are serving the purposes of the current board and the current needs. And how they might expand or contract or, go away or, new ones may come, that kind of thing. So those are sort of like the 6 big topics. Do any of those feel like things that could sort of, I don't know,
I think
go by the wayside or be assigned to a committee?
So I think, looking
Yeah,
at,
please.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
so I'm thinking,
I don't have a whiteboard,
yeah,
unfortunately.
the community structure could definitely fall on board development, right?
Sure.
Like, for board development to look at that.
Okay.
Communications with the committee, well, we haven't, I mean, we've kind of touched upon that, but we could definitely,
Yeah, I think we can discuss that in communications and bring recommendations back to the board.
yeah, so the advisory committee, I would again kick to board development. Which leaves us with 4.
Can I jump in? It seems to me that like the centering student voice should just be a goal, like something that's just built in that we're, no matter what we're doing with this, I don't think that necessarily needs to be a standalone.
Yeah, I think,
like just a value, or.
but I think highlighting it as a particular thing that we want to make sure that we're increasing, I think is worthwhile to put it on as a goal. Like, I know that it is, I think we all sort of center it in the things we do, but I think having it, calling it out as a board goal this year is a good way to maintain our focus.
I'll just like piggyback on that to say, I hear what you're saying, Allison, because it's like, of course, it should be at the center of our work, and it is philosophically at the center of our work, but I think, what we have found, and I think this is what Sarah's articulating, is that by forefronting it like as a focus project for this year, it actually allows us to develop those mechanisms where it becomes integrated. So if for not year 1, obviously this is not the first year that we've tried to think about student voice, we thought about it 4 years ago when we created this position, and there's been various iterations of that. But I think to dedicate like a little bit of time and focus to it would help us set up the structures to like integrate it into the everyday, so that 3 years from now it's not a goal because it's a practice.
So just like what I was saying, that I was thinking more like if we only have to have 3,
No.
but if there's something like that, yes to everything you're saying, and then the other thing I would just say, I know I brought it up, but pushing for, really advocating on the AI data privacy, because I believe on the technology committee, I think we're going to be working on a refresh of the technology plan for the district. So it seems like the timing would make sense for us to be doing that too.
Right, and I think we should remind ourselves that like the work of the district committees can still happen in parallel with the board's own goals. The board may have like a different angle or a different approach, and the work would be sort of mutually supportive and inform each. The work of each would inform the other, of course. But I don't think we should feel limited just because there is a committee.
Well, I think that's why we should have it, because
That's
so
what
we
I'm
can,
saying,
I think it could complement each other very well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, other thoughts now that we sort of articulated this list of 6 and potentially, not punted, but assigned 2 of them to committees, which is the purpose of committees,
Yeah.
is to take the work
Doing
off
some
the
of this work,
board.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're down to like 4
Yeah.
focus areas.
Well,
And I would actually recommend in thinking about it, and I think it would stay as a board goal, but particularly that elevating student voice. That's something that we can take back to each of our committees and think about it within
In the context.
in the context of
Yeah.
that committee of
Yeah.
like what are some ways that we can
Elevate student
elevate
voice.
student voice.
Yeah.
But I don't really see a problem, even if the work on the communications and the discussion board development committee structure is delegated as far as the work is concerned. I don't, and I'll throw it out there, I don't see a problem with identifying it as a goal in the sense that at the end of the year, we will be thinking how have we, in those two cases, through our committees,
Right,
reporting to us, moved forward
right.
on that, and, whether it's completed or not.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with including all 6, with the understanding, and perhaps it's even specifically in the goal document, that, the work on this will be
Right, yeah.
delegated.
I think that's in line with the way that we established our goals last year. For example, we had that development of an onboarding guide, which was something that was definitely handled by board development, but it was a goal for all of us to contribute to it and to inform it. So I think that that's appropriate. And it doesn't, I think the reason that, sometimes it feels intimidating to have 6 goals is the feeling of like, how is that, how are we going to hold ourselves accountable to that? But, again, for the benefit of the community, because we all know this, we have instituted a board self-evaluation as part of our governance processes. This is really kind of a standard thing that governing bodies do, which is we sort of think about, halfway through the year, how are we doing with the things that we said we were going to do? And then at the end of the year, having sort of a formal conversation where we write down our thoughts about it and then have a conversation about what we felt like we succeeded at and what we think we could do better. And that has 100% informed even the fact that we're having this conversation in the way that we are today. Right, is that we decided that we didn't want to give responsibility to just 3 of us in committee to start this conversation, but to start it off here. For me, I think this has been like a very robust conversation, and I think I would feel comfortable saying, the 6 things that we've identified with the sort of, the PS to committee, the assignments to committee, that feels like a good start, but I would love to hear from other people, and maybe we should just go around, if there are things that folks want to add so that everyone has a chance to formally say something about these potential focus areas.
You're looking at me, so go first.
Sure.
So I've been speaking a lot, but overall, I do really appreciate the opportunity to discuss this in this format with all of us together in a public forum. It feels right and healthy.
Yeah.
And I like the direction, so thank you.
Great.
Yeah, I would agree. I think these are 6 really robust goals that we've set and things that we can make real progress on this year. So I'm good with it.
I think what we saw was, or what we have seen is a really condensed version of how the leadership team thinks through goal development, right? Beginning with long-term visioning, what kinds of things does this group want to be talking about 12 months, 18 months, 24 months from now? And then I think the critical part is executing, right? And setting up what questions do we have around foundational work that has to happen for some of these things to be successful, right? So if it's student voice, why isn't that part of the board meeting experience now, right? So what do we need to be considering in terms of relationships with the students, relationships with the faculty, climate, culture, those sorts of things? What sort of foundational work needs to happen so it is a sustained thing? We talk a lot about whiplash in the system, right? And not this becoming or any set of goals becoming a new layer of things the system has to do because a group says we're going to do it, but instead the compelling why, right? How do you sell it in a way that feels like it aligns with the work people already want to be doing? So it's, what we're doing these great things, we have kids saying, I want to show this to the board. Right? That's how you know it's successful. So I think that's the critical part.
Thank you. We will certainly be turning to you for guidance on all of this. But hopefully this aligns again with some of the district work in terms of what they're doing, which is what we're trying to all move in the same direction in our different roles. This feels really good to me. These are the things that we've been talking about. These are the things that we're focused on. We're so focused on you guys and your success. It's like literally why we do everything that we do. I'm not going to cry. And I think that these things that we're looking at exploring will eventually do that. The end result of that will be student success. You guys will have great schools where you're able to thrive and you want to come here and learn. And hopefully the work that we do here will support that. So.
I will go last, just because I'm technically moderating. So, yeah.
And thank you for taking us through that. I'm very happy with where we've landed, and I was just looking at where you started with the role of the board in student achievement, and I feel like it's a very well-rounded set of goals that cover a lot of these, if not all of the kind of the main priority areas. So feel really good.
I'm in agreement with what everybody else has said. One of the things that I do just want to point out, which is totally consistent with these goals, but is that when I think about defining student success and I think about assessment systems, I think not only of the establishment of assessment systems that will show the success of a student who is college-bound, but I also am concerned and want to make sure that success can be defined for the students we have today, students whose track is into a trade or not the straight college experience. And the other thing I just want to say, and I think this came both from attending the NYSBA convention, from going through the work we did for the retreat, and just from what I've seen, the fact that as we conduct our meetings, and as we talk about these issues, the focus on students and their success is something that a lot of other meetings that we saw really, you didn't see a lot of that. You saw a lot of bunches of other stuff, which may have been important to those board members, may have been important to certain segments of that community, but that's not why we're here. And that's why when I look at even something like a committee structure, which is, some might say doesn't have anything to do with success, it just has to do with the people around this table. But it does, and I think we all recognize it. So I'm fine and appreciative of this exercise.
That's great.
One more?
Yeah, I think we're definitely on the right path. So the way I think about this when we're working on goals professionally is thinking about what big rocks you want to move, or what are the problems you're trying to solve, kind of, to avoid whiplash, right? And these goals align really well with what the district's working on. So there's that overlap. There's an organic kind of crossover between the two, which is what you want. It's a great starting point. I mean, for student voice, yes, you work on it. I think you build it into your goal structure for the first year or two until it becomes embedded in every facet of the organization. And then that's it. It's done. It's part of the culture work, and then you start looking at the other big rock you want to move. But yeah, I think this is a great starting point.
Phil?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's awesome that we're elevating student voices for one of the points. I think that's very good. I mean, I think it's awesome that I'm already here and have this opportunity, but I think it's great to provide as much student voice and insight as we can, because as Anna was saying, it's kind of the center of everything here. So I think it's great, and I think I'm really interested about the digital landscape goals, and I think everything looks great.
All right, well, just to bring it back, I think the two things I wanted to touch on, Neil, I think it was really important that you reminded us again, because so much of our work in this district, we treat as implicit this idea that when we're looking at success, we're looking at success for all of our students, regardless of what avenue they're choosing once they leave the school system. And I think we do sort of take for granted that that's part of the work here, but I think it's really important that you articulated it, and so we can make it explicit when we're talking about all of these things, whether it's, the things that we want to talk about when we're assessing programs, when we're talking about policies, when we're talking about elevating student voice, when we're talking about looking at the larger picture as relates to New York State, communication and committee structures. We're talking about all those things in terms of the experiences of all students, regardless of where their path is going to take them after they leave the schools. So while that's implicit for us, because that's sort of the framework from which this board and this district operates, I do appreciate your reminding us and also reminding our community of that very, very important fact. The other thing that I'll...
Sorry, just on that point, one of the, I guess, terms that has been kind of floating around for a while in the education space is the concept of college and career readiness.
Right.
Right, so I think, language is important, and it's probably good to kind of embed some of that language in the work that we're doing.
College
and career.
There's like
So that
NACID,
encompasses-
I think the NACID core competencies,
Yeah.
there's like the,
Right, yeah. No, it's good. It is actually good to have like a shorter phrase than like what I use too. So
That's why
that's
it's
always
interjected.
helpful. Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Omar. So that, and then the other thing I'll say is like in terms of like as we're thinking about student success, and also to Steve's point about making sure that that any framework that we create for elevating student voices is a place where people can feel comfortable going, and that it sort of aligns with like the natural progress of their work. What I'll argue is this, is that when we as a board hear from a teacher talking about something that they're passionate about, they are so persuasive. When we hear the students who come into this room, either to demonstrate, like for example, we saw last year the student who had brought there was like a name for it, remind me of it, what it was, the athletic day thing, with the athletic fair, that, like how convincing that was. Every time Phil talks about anything that happens at SFC, it's like, well, that seems like the thing I should have been at, right? So it's like, I think that these are all actually really clear examples of student success, and I think it's important for us as a district for us to also be able to remind our community that when we have students who are able to sort of stand up and speak about what they're doing with such passion and with such forthrightness, and like you can just feel the excitement rolling off of them, the pride in what they have done rolling off of them as they're speaking, that's success. That's like literally what we're all here for, 100%. Pretty much like the only thing any of us are here for, I think, is to be able to watch a student say that, do that, and feel that way, and to know that like we're creating the infrastructure to make that happen. So for me, I think it does feel good to have articulated these things. I think to take them to the next level, we are of course going to make sure that they're specific and they're measurable, and that we can, all the other parts of the SMART framework, right? And also, I think, as we sort of refine them a little bit further, we'll make sure that they are connected to sort of like the why are we asking these questions, and what are we hoping to examine by asking these questions. Certainly, it's not, it's not just to make ourselves feel good or to make ourselves feel like we've set goals, but there has to be sort of something concrete behind it that does either move a rock or a pebble, because it might be a pebble, it may not be a rock every single time, but it's like whatever it is that we're trying to move, we want to make sure that there is movement involved in that. So in terms of next steps, I think probably a draft articulation of these will be somehow put together. I'm not exactly sure the mechanics, but we'll talk to my colleagues on board development about that. And our goal with the goals is actually to be able to bring them back this year for formal adoption. That is something we weren't able to do last year, so it is something that we're going to do this year. We've made a commitment to each other that that's important, not to just say it's a focus area, but to say that we've adopted the goals. So the timeline might be quick. I know we have another meeting coming up like next week. We'll see what we can do in terms of that, because it would be good to get them on the table. And I can't, watch this space, that's what I'll say. We'll see what we can do on that front.
And I think for all of us, since we've kind of fleshed out, we're all in agreement, even if we don't have them articulated and, on paper, we can start working on it.
Absolutely.
Immediately.
Yep, okay. Great, well then I turn it over to you, to our president, because I think that is the close of this conversation.
That's wonderful. Not that it's closing, so that will conclude that portion of our work session, which is the first of that type of work sessions that I've ever had in my tenure as a board member, so that was, it felt good to collaborate in this room with my fellow trustees, that's what I'll say. So moving into board reports, item 6.1, advocacy.
So we have not met as advocacy. I will say that the Westcott group had their advocacy meeting on Monday. Sorry, ran away from you all at the end of our retreat to get to. So we will be working on finalizing the regional legislative priorities for this year. looking to get that finalized in December. That will be shared with, obviously, everyone here and everyone regionally, so that we can begin to prepare for the budget season. I would point everyone to, and I will share it around again, last week we would have all gotten a letter from LHEC that was an update that basically giving us a look and a sort of a look forward to the financial picture for New York State in the coming year. And suffice to say that, there's probably not going to be a lot of extra room in the budget. And so that since we are facing, so that we're likely to be facing financial pressures, that's something that we all want to be thinking about and considering sitting here at this table as we look forward to our budgets and to our programs and making sure that we are advocating in the best way that we can. So we will have our next advocacy meeting on the 10th, I believe.
I think so.
So we will have an update after that.
Just in thinking about what you said, I mean, we couldn't have timed our capital project any better to have it be concluding right now. We really could not have timed that any better.
Absolutely.
Audit?
Audit isn't scheduled to meet again till, we don't actually have it on the calendar yet, but last year we met sometime in February to talk about the risk areas that we want to examine. So I envision that's going to be the next meeting we have.
Board development, I think just,
Well, we just did this, which was great. The only two other things that we just need to quickly mention is, oh gosh, it just went out of my brain. Please take a look at, if you would, the board and district events calendar to make sure that you have an eye to upcoming events at which trustees are welcome, including the regional dinner, which I think you can still sign up for. It's about 2 weeks out. And that is going to be a discussion actually on the topic of AI. So I think that several of us have signed up to attend that. I think that that's the real big one for board development, just to flag it for everybody.
And just one thing that may not be on the calendar, so we got an invite yesterday, to those who are available next Thursday at 9 a.m. to the CET Veterans Appreciation
Oh, yeah,
Breakfast.
I will, thank you.
I think I will be able to attend, so I'll add my name to the calendar when it gets there, and
Yep.
I'll let CET know.
yeah.
We put out a note to the staff asking them to make sure that the board is invited to those sort of events. So you'll be
Thank you.
perhaps flooded, but you'll be getting
No,
more.
we like
Hey,
it.
we like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
we like it. That's what we did. We enjoy it. The opening of the Family Resource Center was,
That was fantastic.
yeah, that was really fantastic.
And as we know, on, I think it's the 10th of November, we'll be meeting before then, it's going to be the high school auditorium,
The ribbon cutting.
ribbon cutting.
That is the 17th.
I was just thinking of
It's
those
Tuesday. That's on the calendar for us.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you know, it's sort of, the public knows
Yeah.
we're celebrating that, those kinds of things.
100%, yeah.
Communications.
So I gave an update at our last meeting from our last communications meeting, and our next meeting will be Monday. So we will have an update then.
Monday at 5, right?
Monday at 5. Yep.
Policy.
Policy met on the 14th of October. There are several policies which have been forwarded for first reading in November. Our next meeting will be the 18th at 5 o'clock, which I know will have to end by 6:30 because the 18th is the day of the ribbon cutting here, so we're not allowed to miss that.
I don't know if anybody has a liaison report.
I have two. So, although this is not a formal liaisonship necessarily yet, but did I talk about the fact that I had a chance to attend the SEPTA meeting last week? Yeah, I'm looking back to when was the last meeting and what's happened since then. So I had an opportunity to, I have sort of informally served as liaison to SEPTA for our board for the last couple of years, but had an opportunity to join them at their kickoff meeting for the year. And I want to just credit them for like a really excellent idea that they have that they are now going to be bringing to a lot of our school and community events through this year. So at Friday Night Stripes, which is a PVC fundraiser event, SEPTA actually, it's an event where different teachers and parent volunteers run sort of activity stations for the middle school students who get to come into their, for people who don't know, they get to come into their school. 5th and 6th graders come for the first hour and a half, and then 7th and 8th graders come for the second hour and a half, and there's all sorts of stuff for them to do. One thing that SEPTA did this year, which I wanted to commend them for, is they actually set up sort of a chill space Zen Den. This was a really popular spot. I wanted to go there also because it was a lovely space. They were taking advantage of one of our lovely resource spaces at the middle school actually, but they transformed it into an area where if you needed to take a break from all the excitement and the running around, you could enter that space, have some relaxing music, have some engaging, sensory activities, or just, again, chill and be zen. And so that launched at Friday Night Stripes, and then they actually brought that same sort of concept to CET's Boo Fest the next day. So what I'm really excited about, just working with my colleagues at SEPTA, is SEPTA represents, as you know, families that are at CET, PVC, and at the high school, and they're really thinking of ways to bring that volunteer spirit and energy to events at all of the school buildings. So I'm sure we'll be seeing them at something. They're thinking of ways that they can bring that same idea of the Zen Den to things like high school performances or concerts, whatever feels appropriate. But I was really excited to see that. They just have a lot of I think good ideas coming. So that was the one that I wanted to highlight at this meeting. For a bicycle pedestrian committee, to which I am a liaison as well, they're actually meeting tonight. I will hope to have more information by our next meeting, but I'm particularly excited that one of the things that they're hopefully talking about right now is the relaunch of Slow Down Proton, which is an initiative very near and dear to my heart, because as a believer, as we all are, in our kids having the ability to walk and bike and roll to school, we want to make sure that our drivers are slowing down enough to accommodate students and making sure that they have safe paths to school. So there are a couple other ideas that we're cooking up on that front, but that one is coming back soon, and I can't wait to hear more about it and to tell you all about it. That's it for me.
I attended the high school movie night last Friday night, which was happening at the same time as Friday Night Stripes. I was wondering if you wouldn't have some of the kids from PVC coming up, but I think that everybody was contained in their respective school spaces. It was the first year that I always get it wrong, the parent PTSA hosted it. There was about 40 kids there. They all kind of came up with their blankets. There was popcorn and hot cocoa. It was like the first cold night of the year. I just really appreciated that the BTA and they were focused on doing something for the high school kids to have like just a good humble night, eating popcorn on the field behind the high school. So I want to thank them for sponsoring that. It was the first year they did it. I'm sure next year they'll have more people and it'll just become one of those staples that happens in the fall. At least I hope that.
Nice.
Yes, the one thing that I will report on, but very briefly, is that a number of our board members attended the New York State School Board Association convention. As you know, I represented our district at the business meeting, and so as the NISBA Resolutions Committee head, spoke a lot, but mainly to say, Resolution 1, and read it, but that's fine.
Maybe just had to be on screen all night.
And she had to be on screen for like 6 hours. And we also attended, I went to sessions Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Other members of the board were there. Like I mentioned, Allison, Sarah was there Thursday, Friday. Allison and Anamika were there on Friday. We got a lot out of it. What I will be doing for the board, just started it, is to provide a detailed recap of the sessions that and not just the board, also the administration, because there's a lot of stuff that I learned and heard about relating to AI, relating to CTE, relating to special ed, which is all things, and that's what we do when we go there. So when people say, well, what do you do as a board member? Why why are you going to New York or next year Buffalo? You're going so that you can meet your colleagues, you can collaborate with them, you can learn from them, they can learn from you. And just like, teachers say they get energized when they go to, professional development, that's our professional development, and for those who attended, it energizes me and hopefully my colleagues.
Yeah, I know I don't know when we're gonna sort of talk about this, or whether we'll reserve it for just whenever Neil kicks off our recap document, we can all be like the footnotes at the end after the 17 pages. But I'll share one of my footnotes now. So I think for me, the price of admission, and I said this when we were there on Friday, was a really excellent presentation about data privacy, which I think there were some really good learnings from that. We'll share the presentation materials and sort of bring that back to policy actually, which I think will probably be the right place to talk about some of the questions that came up there. But it's such a urgent topic right now that I was really happy to have the opportunity to hear that. And then the other thing that I think, again, as to Neil's point about like you come away from these things, and for me, I've been sort of like off the road professionally in my other job for a long time, so it's been a while since I've gotten to do a conference for PD, but it's like you come out of those things and you're like, okay, this is why I'm doing this, and you feel like you've connected with people and you've learned so much. We had like an excellent keynote speaker, I thought, at the Friday opening remarks with Tim Shriver and the Dignity Index, and I think his remarks on sort of how to engage in and sustain civil discourse in a civic discourse in a civil fashion. There's just so much that we could learn from that as a board, both in terms of sort of how we're interacting sort of with each other again within our school community, and then also I think there's some learnings that we could take away and apply to things like our hearing of the public and the communications that we're making in response to correspondence that we get. So I look forward to referring some of that to board development, to the communications committee as well.
I just want to add, I'm only going to be reporting on the sessions I went to. I didn't go to that one, and there are probably lots of...
You did go to that one, those were the opening remarks.
No, the data privacy.
Oh, the data privacy,
And
no
so-
way, got you covered.
Right, so hopefully I will, will be able to share that. And I know for purposes of communication to the public of what we're doing, I'm not going to do a 17-page write-up. I'm going to do the condensed version that can be used for...
12 pages.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to get it down to one.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I'm disappointed.
What
And,
Maybe 4 points, I
and I do have a few photos that I will...
Yes,
Are you
yeah.
guys eating dumplings?
No, we were conventioning.
That's funny.
Conventioning, but we will have something. We are working on short, pithy statements about our experiences that we'll share with communications so that you can then send that on.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Moving into item 6.2, adjournment of the meeting. Recommended action, be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby adjourns the meeting at 9:17 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you to everyone who has been, who is watching this, whether it be in real time or a later date. The next business meeting of the board will be next Thursday, November 6th. We expect it to start at 7:30. Have a great weekend.